Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about architects. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what are the essential qualities of an excellent software architect? Well, that's a big one. I would say communication, vision, and domain knowledge, or I don't know how to define it, an understanding of the process of and that includes a lot of things, I would say, but I'll try to keep it at three, and then we'll just shuffle in everything under that, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to remember what I said, because I don't write this stuff down. So, first and foremost, I hope communication is fairly straightforward. As a software architect, the vast majority of your time is going to be spent delivering on some type of vision for the company. And in order for you to do that, you're going to have to be able to communicate with people, and you're going to have to be able to communicate with different types of people, because the way that you make a non-technical stakeholder understand what's happening and why we're doing things in a certain way, or like what the trade-offs are with one solution over another, is that the discussion you have with that person is going to be vastly different from what you're going to deal with when you're talking to the software developers and the teams themselves. And that requires you to have a fairly high understanding of like a fairly high level of empathy and social skills, because you're going to be in so many meetings and conversations with different people, where you have to really understand what's going on, and you need to have other people trust you, because it's a especially in the larger companies, guys. It's you might think that in some, like, that the architect is someone who's like just gonna go and say, yeah, we do this and we do that, like they're sort of like almost a manager. That's far from the case in many situations. A lot of what you're doing is basically trying to orchestrate, and that orchestration between different people comes down to figuring out what the people in charge want to happen, and then aligning with the people who are involved in all those different processes and all those different decisions on like how to basically take in the requirements, and then explain to them how to effectively do that. And in some cases, and I've been here a few times, which is super, this is where it gets really difficult. In some cases, you're dealing with different qualities of people. In other words, you have situations where a classic one is you have one team who says that something can't be done, but it has to be done. And that brings us to like the domain knowledge, or like the understanding of technical matters and so forth. Because if you want to deliver on architecture or something like that, you really have to need to know your shit if you want to be good at this thing. Because the reality is that when we talk about these larger scope projects, we talk about vision, we talk about delivering on like a future vision or a state for a company, where like it's basically, in a sense, it's like mapping out the future and how we're going to get there. It is imperative that you know when someone is bullshitting you, or when someone is incompetent, or when someone is not actually seeing, thinking that something is a problem when it's not a problem, or when someone thinks that something is easy when it's actually going to be a problem. That foresight and that ability to see that's the vision part talking, but you have to learn how to talk to people in an effective manner, and you will I promise you guys, you will develop, if you want to survive or if you want to be able to do this well, you will evolve a patience that is on par with a glacier, and a calm, hopefully, unless you're gonna get high blood pressure, that is on par with the most zen, mindful, stoic, call it whatever you want, person in the world, because that is what's going to be required for you. Because unfortunately for you, which maybe you saw, the software developers haven't really thought about, guys, if you work in a team with 5 people, maybe one of those people are not so good at what they do. Imagine having multiple teams over a vast ecosystem of services and systems, where the people that you talk to, they don't represent a single like person working on code. They manage one or two teams that in turn turns out to be 5 or 6 other people. Like, the scale of what you have to be involved in at the software architecture level is pretty high, depending on the size of the company, and your ability to talk to these people and basically sit in endless meetings until you find a shared understanding of how to go forward can be a very frustrating part of this job. And the communication is the only thing that's going to get you to go anywhere, because it really comes down to you having the ability to relay your thoughts and understand other people in order to actually make any progress. And that systematic way of working is essential for you to deliver on anything. Second thing is vision. You have to have a vision of how to get something done. This is the least, I would say it is the rarest and most scarce personality trait or skill that we have, I would say. It's rare that I meet anybody who can do this in a readily. A person who has a strong understanding of how to take the next step. What should we achieve? What is the next goal? Most management and most people in any type of higher positions, they don't really, they are not visionaries on average. What they do is that they facilitate, which is, as I like to say, it's the poor man's way of being a leader. It's the thing that you do when you're incompetent, or like when you don't really know how to make meaningful contributions yourself. And that's something that I'm not saying that a leader has to like be a dictator or something like that. You should absolutely facilitate things. But if your solution to what is the next thing, how do we get to where we want to be, is to basically facilitate meetings and discussions, it means that you are looking for someone else to help you arrive at the solution, quote unquote, as people like to say. We should arrive at the solution together, which is absolutely true. But if you've ever been in a group discussion on how to get somewhere, you will very quickly notice that on average it's not the case that everybody is contributing equally. And that's not a requirement for you to get to a future vision, but it's very important that you as an architect have the visionary mindset so that you can help drive the conversation. Because see if you've heard this one. Have you ever been in endless meetings about what you're going to do, and you seem to never get any good ideas, so you seem to never get anywhere with your conversations because you just keep on having meetings over and over and having the same discussions over and over without ever actually making progress? That is the thing that happens when no one in the group has vision, when nobody knows how to get to where you want to go, and no one knows how to actually make everybody else believe or see that vision. And that's where the communication comes in. You have to be able to verbally or like communicate what you're thinking, how to get to where you want to get. Which brings us into the last one, which is that you have to have a very strong understanding of the process. In other words, or the domain called what you want, right? You have to understand the business that you're dealing with, the people that you're dealing with. You have to understand how software developers work, basically the entire chain of events that are going to take place in order to deliver on some end goal. And the reason why that is very important is because without it, you won't be able to know if somebody has issues, or like if there's a problem that can be fixed. You won't be able to have vision because you won't be able to know what to actually do in the next step. You can like imagine something you want to happen and then ask somebody else to figure out how to get there, but you're not going to be able to provide meaningful feedback. And this is like the way that I look at it. The people who can just basically say what they want and hope that someone else figures it out, they have a different role than you as an architect. The architect is fundamentally a person who has to get things to happen. That is what your responsibility is. You delegate and you take responsibility for projects, but you need to drive them. You need to move them forward, just as a product manager, a product owner, so forth. It's not a job where you can basically just ask somebody else to do it for you. You have to give them the information and the vision and a roadmap of how to achieve those goals. They're at a macro level at the very least. At the micro level, the teams can probably manage it depending on the scale of the thing that you're planning, right? But you're gonna have to have some accountability towards delivering on some type of plan for other people. And that's why I argue that having an understanding, it's sort of like being an engineer, right? If you don't know how a car works, it's going to be very hard for you to plan how to build it. So what I want you to take away from this is that, at least in my opinion, the main things that the qualities of an excellent software architect is, number one, very strong communication skills. You're going to talk with all kinds of people, everything from developers to people who work in the support to people who like are customers, like etc. It can be anything. You're basically responsible for taking all of these different thoughts and ideas of all the different people and either facilitating or moving the project to a concrete plan, a technical plan of how you're going to build this thing and designing the system itself. And in order for you to be able to do that, you basically have to have the communication skills, but also the domain knowledge, because you get the domain knowledge through the communication skills. That's why like this is like all these three things are interconnected to the point where you can't really do one without the other, in my opinion. So communication first and foremost. Second, you need vision. You need to have a fairly strong imagination, or like a way of thinking where you can sort of structurize these loose thoughts, because usually people are not going to come to you and say, I want you to build this thing or that thing, etc., etc. They're going to come with problems and needs, and just basically have a lot of frustration or desires of things to change, and it's your personal, it's basically your job to figure out, okay, how do I take all of these different requirements and make a system that solves those sorts of problems, and that requires you to have vision. Third and lastly, you need to have domain knowledge, or call it, like, I don't know a better word for it, but you need to understand how the teams are working. You need to know how the company's working. You need to know what the expectations are. You need to understand how to deliver this thing. You need to know how the process should work, etc., etc. The level of involvement, like at the technical level, that you need can vary a little bit here, but you can almost look at the correlation between your technical experience and the likelihood of a well-working system as being, yeah, let's say that they are very, very much coupled, because a software architect is it can be the most one of the most effective and important people in the world if they know what they're doing, and they can also be the worst person to have involved, and everybody, like the developers, hate them and feel like they're incompetent when they are lacking in that specific area, when they don't really know how technology works, or how systems work, or how the different projects work, which is a classic one. You have some architect who only sits in meetings all day long, creates this grand vision of like a perfect system, never even talks to the teams, never ever even checks in on the technology, and basically builds the world's most expensive flow chart, and then tells people, go and deliver this thing. And then it's up to the developers to figure out, okay, this thing here, like they're all right, so we make cars, and this guy has designed a moped. Okay, how do we make a car into a moped? That's the sort of sensation that you get to, where a architect is so light on actual understanding of the domain that they basically design something that is just going to cause more problems than it's actually going to solve. Have a great day.